and welcome to Youth in Sports, where every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. we feature special guests from near and far. The program is sponsored by ATI Physical Therapy, providing certified athletic trainers to more than 30 area high schools and colleges. First State Orthopedics, the team taking care of Delaware with a commitment to excellence. And Wilmington University, where Youth in Sports is produced by the College of Technology's students and faculty. And now, from the studio at President Jack Barcelona's Wilmington University, your hosts for Youth in Sports, ALSSM Mr. Sports Medicine 2012, Dr. Michael Axe, UD and St. Elizabeth's own Dr. Joseph Strait, and co-founder of Youth in Sports, Mr. Walter Laudine.
Good evening. Welcome to Youth in Sports at beautiful Wilmington University. And we're just happy to be here. It's a great facility. We've got students manning the camera, professors doing the work inside, and we're very happy to be here. I think we've been here 4 or 5 years now.
It's creeping up on us.
On my right is
Dr. Michael Axe of First State Orthopedics, and on your left
is
Dr. Joseph Strait from First State Orthopedics.
And what's really cool is Dr. Joe Strait played in the Blue Gold game with my son, went to St. Elizabeth. And,
but they both went to St. Edmunds.
They both went, yeah.
Long time ago. Went to St. Edmunds, and I think Craig was actually in my class.
Is that right? Well, that would be good for you because he wouldn't be taking any of your honors away academically.
Well, that's not true of tonight's guest.
No, it's not. And once again, we're going to bring you an interesting show on an interesting topic. And I love when we're topical and when it affects a lot of people. And the people that watch the show, a lot of times we get grandparents and parents along with the kids. But tonight is going to be a great show for those grandparents and parents to watch, and the kids, because we've got a lovely young lady here representing her school with her mother, who is Tara Manal, who is the Director of Clinical Services at the University of Delaware.
Physical therapy.
Physical therapy. I didn't put that down.
And that's okay.
And her daughter, Sydney. And I love that name, Sydney, because my best friend in New York, his granddaughter's name's Sydney, spelled S-Y. How did you decide, Tara, to spell it S-I?
Yeah, I decided I wanted to just go what I thought was kind of universal for U.S., so not pick the Australian version. And
is that the Australian version?
Well, that's the capital, Sydney.
Oh, right,
so,
Sydney.
So I decided I would go that U.S. version, and everyone thought it was a boy.
Well, that's the one name.
Well, I can assure you that this Sydney is not a boy.
Oh my God, no.
No.
She's a lovely little girl, and I'll tell you,
she's not so little.
She's not a little girl. She's a young lady. And
with freckles.
I hope she has a lot to say because
oh, she'll have a lot to say.
She is, and she's once again, the girls always print wonderfully. They always do.
She's my version of some Shirley Temple.
Who Sydney did not know, because we date ourselves on this show.
We do.
And we got to be really careful.
I don't even know Shirley Temple.
You didn't?
No. No.
Just a little bit.
Dr. Strait knew who Shirley Temple was because he's drank a few.
To drink.
Oh, no.
My child orders that occasionally.
That's exactly
right. Let's forget about that and our shortcomings, and let's go right to Tara.
I want to just give you the reason why we're having this show tonight. You know, so often as parents, and certainly myself, who takes care of a lot of teams, and Walter as a grandparent, we are faced with these decisions on where to go to school. And if you look at the playoffs this week, or that happen in any sport, we see a lot of the charter schools are doing quite effectively, and there's the private schools. We have St. Elizabeth's and St. Mark's and Sally's and Archmere. But we have a Wilmington Charter, we have Conrad now, Walter, for a school for the sciences, but Penn Cater, a business school, and then downstate, of course, in addition to our Votech schools. But parents are trying to best prepare their kids to keep them both excited and interested and worldly. And these immersion schools, here in Delaware, we have two versions. We have the Spanish immersion schools and we have the Chinese immersion schools. Makes sense, right? It's two languages that encompasses a lot of people. Certainly our Hispanic population, they're coming here and learning their English, but we have to be able to communicate. And many times parents feel that the best way that you communicate is understand and talk the other individual's language. And certainly as we look at anything that happens in the U.S. right now, Spanish is an important language, as is Chinese.
Well, one of the things that people don't realize, and I don't know, I'm going to date myself now, but one of the big books I read after I came back from Vietnam was The Ugly American.
Sure.
In The Ugly American, one of the things they said was that Russian and Chinese ambassadors that were sent to a country spoke the language, unlike our ambassadors who don't. And in fact, one of the situations in The Ugly American was that the insurgents were writing that the rice that we were giving them was from them, and we didn't know the difference. And one of the things that I think is important about this is it is important that we get bilingual or trilingual, and these schools are on the forefront.
Well, we have a lot of young people that come to study in the U.S., and they certainly learn their English and they Italian or Norwegian or whatever, and they work a lot in the clinic where Tara works, who's the director at UDPT in our clinic and its clinical services. But basically, she's responsible to make sure the day-to-day operations go well. In addition, she has a background in dance. She was part of the dance team at the University of Delaware.
Oh, cool.
And still takes care from the American Physical Therapy Association. She's interested in that aspect of things. She's a speaker throughout the country for UDPT, but today she's a mom, and she's going to share with us her daughter's plight on getting an education. And then Sydney's going to talk about her school, the Las Americas Aspiras. So, Los Americas Aspiras.
Los or Las?
Los. Las?
Las.
It's feminine. Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Well, let's start with Tara. Tara, tell us a little bit of your background. All right, we're back on Youth in Sports, and we're talking to Tara and her daughter, Sydney Manal. And Mike, we're going to go with Sydney, why Tara decided to send her to school.
Yeah, we're going to go with Tara and just say, Tara, you know, you've made these decisions. Obviously, Sydney has special gifts. And you went to the public system. Tell how you made the decision that you decided that more, I mean, her dad's a college professor. You're an educator as well, so we have a pretty good gene pool working here. And you decided that, hey, this is the direction. How do you handle it?
Yeah, she was at West Park Elementary School, which was right behind our house. She actually could walk through the backyard and go to school. And it's a wonderful school. And it's quite eclectic because so many of the professors at the university have visiting scholars who come in, and they live right in that general area. So in her actual class since kindergarten or first grade, she had at least 25% who were foreign born and English as a second language. So she's always had quite an eclectic environment, and that was pretty cool. She came home one day and said something about my friends from this country and this country, and she could name quite a few countries, and they were all her friends at school who came from all these wonderful places. So she's always had like quite a bit of exposure. And she does well academically, and we were really always considering what we would do to challenge her, and we were talking about getting an after-school program in Spanish. They had one at West Park run by university professors that would come in with their students once a year for a few weeks, and she did that and loved it. And then just at that time, ASPIRA, Las Americas Aspira Academy, put out in the paper that they were moving to developing this school, which was an immersion Spanish school, a charter immersion Spanish school. And actually a friend of ours, Lynn Snyder-Mackler, said, hey, did you see this? And I said, I haven't seen it yet. And she said, you know, read the paper. So ran over, got it, and looked at it, and we actually called right away. And they were already taking applications at that time period. So we submitted the application, and I did it before I told Sydney. And so I said, you know, hey, Sydney, there's this opportunity for this school. They're going to speak Spanish. And she said, oh, I'd have to leave my school. And I said, yes. And she said, I think it's cool. And I said, well, okay. So there we go. And she was the last child admitted to the 4th grade. So she got the last spot that was available last year in the 4th grade. And that was their first year of opening.
Did they begin?
How long has it been open?
Oh,
this is the 2nd year. So this fall is year 2, and so she was there for the opening in the very first year.
That's great.
Did they begin in 4th grade or begin in kindergarten?
They actually, and I have to remember, last year did they have kindergarten? Yeah. Yeah. So they had kindergarten through 5th last
grade,
year,
yes.
And then this year they added the upper grades. So they're adding them as the children matriculate to the next grade. Then that next grade is now added. So so she was in the second to oldest class that was admitted at the time when they opened.
Well, one of the things they always say about language is the younger you learn them, the better you speak them. And certainly starting young, it'd be the
Right.
The absolute best thing to do.
Right. I mean, the competition for the kindergarten is the thing now, right? So we have this immersion school at Las Americas ASPIRA. There's also immersion schools through the public school system. There's 3 different ones in Delaware, 2 in Spanish, 1 in Chinese, and they begin in kindergarten, and they are doing half day English, half day Spanish.
Wow.
And that or Chinese, and that's the goal, is to really immerse them. Then they don't lose any academics, because even if you repeat it and they don't understand the second half, they already got it in their other language first. So balancing that over time, the two become seamless, so that that's not really such a stressor, because you're not losing academics. It's a little harder when you come in at 4th grade and you have your standards that you still need to meet academically. You know, it's difficult to take a full course in math, for example, in Spanish when you don't even know the numbers.
Right.
So these guys are doing that, you know, intensive Spanish training, but English is still the primary language for the other major subjects.
What were you going to ask him?
I was just wondering where they're located. I mean, I know that the one is in Newark.
Right.
But
So
the other
Las
3.
Americas is in Ruth R. Drive, across from the UPS. It's in the old American Home Patient. So when that building was vacated by American Home Patient, they took it over and did some renovations and moved right in. So they lack a playground. They lack some of those opportunities that you would have in a typical, you know, school system. But we thought that the trade-off was worth it for, you know, what was happening inside the building, for some of the challenges on the outside.
Is Delaware the first state that has started this?
Started charters, immersion charters, or immersion programs?
Yeah.
No, I don't know all the states that have them, but it's evolving, and it
For those same 2 languages, or for?
Most programs that have immersion have Spanish and Chinese, because they're the 2 predicted
Right.
most popular languages coming. And I can't remember, Caesar, there's the schools in Delaware that have them. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there's the 1 Chinese and then the 2 Spanish.
One of the issues that's always fun is that, so you got there, and had you taken Spanish and before?
Yes.
Okay, so what was the difference when you got there, having taken Spanish up to 3rd grade, and having some kids in class that were speaking Spanish? For you, what was the difference when you got to the immersion school?
Well, everybody kind of knew Spanish, because everybody had somewhat been in a Spanish community. So it was easier to talk, because you could say a couple things in Spanish and then finish your sentence in English. So you could get the Spanish words out, but then still know what else to do.
We take breaks, and we're going to come into a break in a little while, in about 30 seconds. But what was the first thing that was new that you learned in your new school?
Weather vocabulary.
Which ones? What kind?
We learned about like how to say things feminine and masculine, and that comes to play in almost every word. And
Did he teach you food first or numbers first?
numbers.
Numbers, okay.
I even remember my numbers.
Do you? Yeah. That's
I
good.
remember the numbers in Vietnamese.
Well, it's amazing, because they're teaching that now in kindergartens, the days of the week,
And they
the
should.
numbers,
And they should.
Well, we're gonna go to break right after this, and we'll come back and talk about immersion schools here in Delaware right after this.
I will keep dancing on point, even if it hurts.
My arm is killing me. I don't know if I can pitch another ball. But I'll just play through the pain anyway.
I have to do the big stunts. To look better than the other cheerleaders, our tosses are bigger.
My elbow really aches, but I got to keep practicing.
Don't tell them it hurts. It'll take you out of the game if you do. I have to push harder if I'm going to get a scholarship. I'm feeling dizzy, but I don't want to tell anyone.
Everyone's counting on me. I can't rest now.
Nearly 50% of all sports injuries sustained by middle and high school students are from overuse. Don't play through the pain. See your healthcare provider and follow their instructions for rest and recovery. Take the pledge. Become an advocate for sports safety. Visit stopsportsinjuries.org.
Go team!
Hi, we're back on Youth in Sports. We're talking to Tara Manal and her daughter Sydney about immersion schools, which I really didn't know that much about, but I think it's a great idea. And let's learn more about it. Mike?
Yeah, so we're back. We were talking about what you first learned in 4th grade.
Yes.
Okay? So take me through, let's start in 5th grade. You're in 5th grade now.
Yes.
So tell me what you did today in immersion school.
Today, well, we have tests every week on anything that we've learned. So we get a list of vocabulary words, and we have to learn them through homework. And we talk about them a lot in class, and we do a lot of different activities with them. And today we had a review because we have a big unit test coming up, which basically is everything we've learned in the trimester coming into one big test. And it goes for like all of the 5th grade, and we all take this one test all together, and it's a big test, but we know.
How do you practice? Do you practice at home with your mom?
Yeah, sometimes, and other times I even just practice with myself.
What about vacations? Wouldn't Mexico be, well, Mexico's a tough place right now, but a Spanish-speaking country, have you ever gone to one?
No.
I mean, do you think if you did go to one that you'd be able to converse pretty well?
Yes, especially because when you're just fully immersed in a place, you pick up new words easily because you can tell just a little bit of vocabulary in the sentences, and you can almost see what they're going to say without actually knowing the entire sentence.
Now you have 21 kids in your class.
Yes.
And you said half of them are Latino, half
Yeah.
of them are Spanish kids. Do you find that you're helping them to learn English while they're helping you to learn Spanish, or their English pretty good?
Most of them are English pretty good. Some of them are like us in Spanish, where we have to keep learning new things, but they're not falling behind. So they're just picking up as they go. So yes, I believe we're helping them, but they're also helping us.
Oh, you know, I didn't understand that. I thought to myself, well, if a Spanish-speaking kid was in that, they'd really do well. But they're learning English.
Of course they are.
While you're learning Spanish.
Well, and not only that, you know, some of the children have experience in Spanish because even in their home it's spoken, or with their grandparents, maybe not in their primary home, but with their extended family, but that doesn't mean they can write it or read it.
Right.
And so they have to go back and do the same vocabulary test. You have to spell it. The accents have to go in the same place. So you end up going back and enhancing what you know. Even though you know it, now you have to go back and get every part of it right. And so they work really, they do just work just as hard.
Right, that's about the hardest part there is, because they think they all know it, but then when they go to take the test, they all seem to forget it on the spot because they don't study as much as they think they should, because they already think that they know everything. But it actually sometimes turns out that some of the kids that aren't Hispanic get better grades because they push themselves to their limits to figure out their.
Well, let me tell you what the worst thing is. Okay, you think that you've spoken English all your life, and you start doing crossword puzzles.
Yeah.
And the worst part is when you look up a clue, and you don't know the words that they gave as an explanation for the clue. So then you're like, whoa. So I understand what you're going through. What's the hardest part for you? Is it writing it? Is it understanding it? What's the hardest part of learning a new language?
I think the hardest part is just like hearing it and being able to translate it into English in my mind, because for me, conjugating verbs, because for every tense and things you have to, or for a girl or a boy, you have to change things about the word. So that's tricky for me when they're talking fast, because unless it's unless it's right in front of me, I can't hear it as well as I would if I would read it.
Does that give you, does that give you more respect for the translators at the UN that have to, boom, boom, boom?
Yes, definitely.
It's the communication. It's the transition between communication from being able to see it and read it versus to be able to communicate with the words is the hardest part, it seems.
Now, Tara's our interpreter for Spanish at the clinic.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, how did you get involved?
When did you learn
Spanish? What was your background?
Well, and my exposure was a little later than Sydney, so I didn't start till high school. And then I minored in Spanish in college so that I would keep it going. Right. And I was lucky enough that I had my high school I went to was very good. And so my Spanish was good enough that when I tested in college, I tested out of a language. So I technically didn't have to take one, but that was a perfect opportunity to do a minor. So in the same, schedule of when I would have taken my basics or the college courses, I could go and take my minor. So
well, there's a little bit of a innuendo here, though. the hardest minor at Delaware is Spanish. And the reason
Why?
I know that because it has 12 courses. She passed out of her language, but that didn't count because the courses that she passed out of wouldn't have counted toward her minor anyway. So Jeremy did the same thing. My Jeremy was a Spanish minor at Delaware.
So in other words, don't take the Spanish minor at the University of Delaware.
Oh no! I'll tell you the hardest part though. It is difficult, but the part that I think is the coolest is to actually get it finally at the end.
Right.
It's like a comprehensive test. So you actually take this test, and if you don't pass it, you have to take it again. And there's sections, and it's primarily grammatical issues and things, and you have to keep going until you pass all the sections. And if I don't know what happens if you never do, but you have to keep taking that test until each section you succeed at.
Well, in New York, we have regents in high school. And I remember I had to take the Spanish regent to pass Spanish. And I sat there, it was like a 4-hour test. And you can understand this, Sydney. I sat there for 2 hours on the comprehension part, blank, just blank. And all of a sudden it came to me and whoop, whoop, and I did well. But it was like really weird. It never happened to me before, blank.
Yeah. And that's what Sydney was talking about. Some of the challenges in communicating is, you know, she was practicing things in case she had to speak Spanish tonight, and she can say a lot, and she practices it.
Is it true you can roll your R's, Sydney?
Yeah. She is very good at it, and I can't, and that's the joke of the family.
You mean you can sing La Bamba?
She can sing too, and so it is really challenging. We went to Kennett's for dinner this past
there
weekend.
you go, the mushroom country.
On purpose to go to a Spanish-speaking restaurant, and Sydney did well, but she did all her ordering in Spanish, and she communicated with the waitress in Spanish, and the waitress was excellent, and she would switch. So she would speak to me and Sydney in Spanish, and then she spoke to everyone else at the table in English. So she was switching back and forth depending on what we were giving back to her.
That's
so
excellent. She gets to
nice.
use it at home with you, Tara. And that was my biggest thing. I took Spanish in high school at St. Elizabeth's. I had 4 years at St. Elizabeth's. I took a year and a half at Delaware as part of my undergraduate, and I think it was I just stopped using it. At the time, I was doing very well with it, but from my first 1.5 years into the University of Delaware, I stopped using it, and now in the field that I'm in, we need this language with our patients. A lot of our patients cannot communicate, and we need to be able to do that, and I've been working on it, but I don't have the time to go back and do it. So there's a lot of extra things out there to kind of help. I guess there's the Rosetta Stone, I think it's called. There's
that's what I wanted to ask you. Have any of you availed yourself of those language programs? And which one is really, they say the Rosetta Stone is the best one.
I mean, I only can look at what they say, you know, and they say that it is. I know people who've done it in other languages and been very pleased.
Really?
Because I already had the skill set. For me, I watch Spanish TV, and
you do?
Yeah, I do.
Telemundo.
And it helps me, especially with English subtitles, because then if I don't know a word, I can look really quickly, and so it really does help me. And we've even done Spanish movies as a family with English subtitles, but we're exhausting our other two family members because they're reading everything, so they're not that fond of it.
Well, Sydney, you know, they say that in the old days, everybody took Latin, because Latin, when you understood Latin, you would get the derivatives of all these words. I remember reading the one book about religion, and in that book was so many derivatives of certain words. Do you find that if somebody's speaking Italian or somebody's speaking another language, you can kind of pick a little bit of it up?
Yeah, some of the Romance languages are easier they're easier because they're easier than not knowing anything at all, just from being one language, because they have kind of the same roots. So you can kind of figure out a couple words, but I couldn't like sit and have a conversation.
One of the things I've heard before is that certain people have a propensity to pick up languages. Do you think you're one of those people? Like, for example, after you learn Spanish, and what about you too also, Tara, after you learn Spanish, if you started taking French or Italian or something, it would really come easy for you. Is that true, or?
Well, see, like, it would be hard, because I think for me, even sometimes I get confused between one Spanish word and another. So getting confused between one language and another might be hard, but I think it wouldn't be impossible. It just would be extra work.
Well, like in Vietnamese, there's one word has 10 different meanings. It's your inflection, which is really the toughest for a non.
All right, so
I want to learn about the school a little.
Yep.
I want to know what Sydney has to go through daily? I know that you say what you did today, but tell everybody, is it all Spanish? Is it half and half, or is there certain classes? Tell us what you have to go
the
through.
kindergartners have half-day Spanish because they are allowed to. Immersing for them is easier because they don't do as hard work as us. So we have one class of Spanish, but the Spanish for us is we learn a bunch of things a day instead of learning just like one little part of a thing.
All right, so now that was one class. How about at lunchtime? Do you guys speak Spanish or English at lunch?
We normally speak English, but actually sometimes some of the kids that know Spanish better speak Spanish to each other. So it's kind of tricky in the sense that we don't always know what they're saying, but the teachers know, so.
Well, I think
let's talk about the teachers, okay? Are the teachers, are most of the teachers English speaking that learn Spanish, or are they Spanish speaking that learned English, or are they from Spanish families, or how did they work? Were they like your mom, who were Spanish minors or majors in college and now teach another course like math, or what?
Well, the younger grades have more Hispanic teachers, but when we get up to our grades, they don't really have to be with us teaching Spanish, because a lot of times the little kids, their teachers teach them Spanish. But most of the like 3rd to 6th grade teachers they don't really have anything to do with Spanish. So. Do
they use the word Latino and Hispanic interchangeably at school? Or does it mean something more to the kids that are there? That are they offended that the Puerto Ricans and Mexicans and so forth? I know that they identify with their nation that they've come from. But is there a general term that they distinguish between Latino and Hispanic, or do they use it the same regardless?
No, they really use it the same, because a lot of times they'll just be like, a lot of times it's just Hispanic, and that's just what they say.
One of them doesn't like to be called Hispanic. Is it Puerto Rico, or one of the
it's probably a function of us telling them they don't like it as opposed to them really
No, they absolutely do not like it. I read it.
Well, we certainly don't mean to be offensive.
No.
That's what I was
asking. They just don't want to
be.
They say we're not Hispanic, or we're not. I forget what. I think it's Hispanic.
Yeah.
We only got less than 10 seconds left. We've got a lot of things more to talk about, and with Tara and Sydney, and we're going to be back in 10 seconds.
Yeah, now we'll be back right after this, and we're immersion schools and the options that you have as a parent here in Delaware, where a lot of places don't have them. We'll be back right after this.
What does opportunity mean to you? At Wilmington University, it means providing a personalized educational experience where students learn anywhere at any time. Wilmington University provides a variety of ways to complete your degree. Choose the flexibility of online learning, or attend classes during the day, in the evening, or on weekends at locations throughout the region. It's your degree. Choose how you earn it. Personalized education, affordable tuition. That's the difference at Wilmington University. What does opportunity mean to you? At Wilmington University, it means finding an innovative degree program that fits your goals and prepares you for a successful career. It means finding a school that fits your life. We know the importance of providing individual attention, affordable tuition, and unparalleled flexibility in service. Because at Wilmington University, it's not about meeting your expectations, it's about exceeding them. Personalized education, affordable tuition, that's the difference at Wilmington University.
Hi, we're back on Youth in Sports. We're talking about immersion schools, which are a great idea and certainly a great option for a parent today. And Joe, you have a young.
He's a parent.
I have a 5-year-old. We talk about Jolie all the time on the show, and my big thing, I've been looking.
And that's the start. I mean,
you got to get
younger
them
than that, right.
And she currently goes to Limestone Hills Day School. She's been there for a couple of years. She's in kindergarten, and we've been looking right now for a elementary school. And I think, I went down, I talked to you earlier about it, we went to charter school and we've put in for the application. And just tell me, I mean, what is there to kind of drive me there to make it say, hey, this is a great place for your kid to go?
Yeah. So I think one of the things about immersion schools that can be frightening is that, you know, you think to yourself, if they're doing these two things, are they really going to learn the one thing that they need well? So are they going to be good English writers and English test takers and learn English really well if they're balancing between two languages? And there actually has been a lot of research on immersion programs, and the data suggests that actually they do the same or better in their English classes, so it's not a detriment to them in learning the English piece. But also, interestingly, and some of this probably makes sense, they do, in general, better on cognitive load testing, where you're switching between things, and because that's part of what they have to do, right?
I was wondering, all the standardized testing and the way it's set up, I'm wondering if that really makes them actually produce better scores.
Yeah, and there is some data to suggest that they have that extended skill. They also talk about children who are in immersion programs having a cultural awareness and a cultural, not just sensitivity, but comfort in a way that they can transition and translate to other people of other countries and cultures really with ease. And so there, in essence, you know, one of the pitches is that it makes you a better global citizen, maybe even better potential employee in a global market, because you've had this skill set and you have not only sensitivities but understandings. And so I watch for some of those even in Sydney, like is something coming home that was a new exposure. And having been in another environment as a younger student in a very eclectic environment with lots of other countries represented, she would know things that a normal, you know, grade appropriate person would not know, because they would have been exposed to the way people dress, modesty, things like that from other countries. And so I've seen this in her over time, and we see it also here. Sometimes they're fun things, like lunchtime has a lot of variety of food, and that was true in her old school as well. And children eat different things, and they'll say, you know, to her, you know, that you eat strange things for lunch, and then they'll get her to try something that's their favorite thing that she's never tried. So there's a lot of exchange in this cultural way that's really just across the lunch table.
Well, what you're saying is so important, because when I was in Southeast Asia, one of the things that I did was to learn the language and the customs. And they appreciate that so much. My interpreter, when I was in the hills, he told me all about his culture and what the whole story was, and he was very intelligent. And the only reason he could make sergeant was because of the fact of his family in Vietnam, or, you know, and in Southeast Asia, it's like that. But I think when you're aware of the culture, it makes you a better international person, and God knows we need that. Because half the wars that we fought are because the State Department doesn't read the history books. And that's a shame. But when you learn the culture... But
they're trying to, this particular immersion school and others are trying to, they saw the problem, and this is an effort to identify and correct for that shortfall. Now, one of the things that you talked about was that they went to a low-cost environment, a warehouse.
Right.
It had been renovated from something else, and you don't have a playground, and you don't have sports. Sydney, if you thought, if they did have a playground, that would be another place that you could go out and share ideas playing sports. So do you get to interact with your classmates at all in any type of athletic environment, or not at all?
Yeah, especially because, like you said, we're in a warehouse, but because it was like a storage warehouse, we have a big gym.
Okay.
So we, for like gym class and stuff, we always have a lot of area and a lot of different varieties of things we can play. Like we have basketball courts, volleyball, soccer.
Soccer got to be a big deal, right?
Right, yeah. And even though we don't have a great like outdoor area to play, we even just play in the parking lot, and that's fun because there's enough room that everybody can do what they want. So we have volleyball going out there, soccer, football, all these different things. And it's just, you know, great to see all these different people learning how to play things together, and different people teaching each other different ways.
Well, one of the things I'm a little confused about is you said, Tara, that they learn English, they have English in one, and then they go and they have the same thing in Spanish. Well, doesn't that curtail the scope of their
That was my concern.
Yeah.
That was the question about history and science and math and arts. And
seems like it's cutting in half the curriculum.
When you start in these younger ages, you know, there's so many, we're just moving to full day kindergarten now.
Right.
So having a half day kindergarten program is typical.
No big deal.
So repeating it again in a second language is really no loss. And in essence, sometimes for some children, even if they don't understand all the words, they're getting the content a second time. And that will pick up a lot of children who might need a second round at something. But I will say that there is a small caveat that's addressed in different literature or things that you'll look at that does say if your child has some level of pragmatic or a speech issue, a speech delay, a language delay inherently in them as they're developing, then you may want to think about this with some greater caution.
Are you talking about a lisp or?
Not so much. That's usually an articulation delay, which means it has to do with how you say it.
What are you talking about?
A speech delay meaning they don't speak a typical number of words at a certain age period. So they actually have a delay in the acquisition of speech. And you can delay how you understand it and you can delay how you give it. Having something like a lisp is a little bit more of a motor issue related to the execution and not necessarily your understanding or competence in language. But there are children who are delayed in getting the basic competences.
Well, they would have a problem in regular school anyway.
And so then the question is, do you want to add this environment on top of that? And it's not an absolute no.
No, it's a good question.
There's not enough of an answer to tell how to know, but it certainly is something to consider whether that may or may not be your best choice under those circumstances. And we have
that said,
choices.
Tara, you have. This doesn't seem to be an environment for individuals who may have some issues with their educational processing, right? I mean,
behavioral
we have behavioral problems as well because the frustration associated with that. Are most individuals that you found in the school at SIDS level?
Yes, there are a lot of exceedingly bright children in the school. There really are, and I think the children also, because they're doing so much of this bilingual environment, are very adaptable. They adapt really well. But there's no doubt.
More professors' kids than SID? I mean, how many? The background of the parents. Is it a highly educated parent mix?
It's a very diverse population pool, and a lot the teachers have their children in the school as well, and a lot of them who are Spanish speakers primarily, their children are already good Spanish speakers, but they're also in the school. So it's really a family environment as well. It's a really nice mix, and so that variety is. But Sydney has she has excelled in academics well in her few years, and she was faced now with something that wasn't as easy as everything kind of has always been. So she went through last year, some challenge, frustration. She was frustrated and had never been academically frustrated before. And we were happy, actually, to see that, because that's an experience you have to learn to negotiate. And so this was one of those times that she got frustrated because she couldn't do it like she had hoped to. And that
so
was
how did you respond to it? Let's go to SID time. And say, well, all right, now you were in 4th grade and this was new to you, and did you feel that you weren't smart? Did you feel that the teachers weren't teaching you well? What was it that you came to the conclusion of why you were having difficulty?
Well, since some of the kids were great at Spanish already because they had either spoken that at home or they were born in a native Spanish country. So for the kids like me who I use a little bit of Spanish, but it's not my language at home. It's harder, but also last year we were mixed, everybody was just put together in one class for Spanish instead of pulling out the kids that could do it in a shorter amount of time and putting the ones that took a little bit longer like they do now, which I find is kind of better because then it gives the ones that can do it a chance to learn a couple more things and the ones that can't to pick up on the things that they can. So it's better in that sense because then you don't come home feeling like you've learned too much or too little.
Sydney, I want to tell you something. We've had over 5,000 to 6,000 young people on the show in high school, and I don't think any of them spoke as good as you did, or with as much personality and aplomb. I mean, I'm listening to you, and I know a lot of 10-year-olds, and you are tremendous. I know that when you were in regular school that you were an overachiever, and I know what your mother's talking about, that, yeah, she wanted to stretch you a little bit, and this was a perfect time. And I think that it's done wonders for you.
All right, so now what class are you in? Are you in with the fast class or the slow class?
The fast class.
I want to know how the kids get together.
No doubt.
how do the kids like communicate? How outside of just school? How are you guys together? Because we know in kind of, I would say like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, there's some issues that happen between children and stuff. But how is it communicating and being active?
Do you have like groups of people that hang out together, and other group aren't involved and aren't allowed to be involved?
The athletes, the smart kids. Do
you have like that separation?
I know it's still a little young, but
not really. The entire point of like the school is trying to get everybody to be together and accept everybody for who they are, because a lot of people are different in a bunch of different ways, especially being in like this type of a school, because there's people that don't know very much English and people that don't know very much Spanish, so when they get together they can find the even perfect for each other. So I think the school is just, in a sense, trying to get everybody together, so
they don't allow that to happen.
So in other words, Sydney, when you walk in the lunchroom, could you sit at any table and be comfortable?
Yes.
That's a great thing. I don't know, and I know in high school we couldn't.
We didn't have that.
No,
you stayed with the group.
Not
of
even
5
junior
or 6
high school. No, that's amazing.
That's great.
And when you have lunch, do you have lunch just with the 21 kids in your class, or?
No, they have all 5th and 6th graders together at lunch. And
how many in the 5th grade?
There's 2 classes, and there's probably like 40-ish kids, and then there's one 6th grade class, and that's probably another 20 kids, so there's probably like 60 kids in the lunchroom at one time.
And you could walk in that lunchroom and sit in any table and be okay.
Right. Yes. What is the Spanish enunciation of Sydney? What do they call you?
Sydney.
Sydney? You don't have a Spanish Sydney? Like Miguel was from Michael, okay? There isn't like Sydney.
Well,
they just say it.
I had a Spanish couple, and I lied and said that I could speak Spanish. And I said, ¿Cómo te dice closet? And the Spanish people looked at me and go, closet. I said, no. ¿Cómo se dice en español? Closet. And they looked at me and they said, closet. And I said, oh.
Yeah.
on Walter's words of wisdom, we're going to go to a break and come back right after this. We're talking about immersion skills on youth and sports.
I know they never make me play with these guys, but why do they make me train like them?
Training hard is important, and for professional athletes, it's their job. But kids aren't professionals and shouldn't train at that level. Keep kids safe on the playing field and out of the operating room. Become an advocate for sports safety. Visit StopSportsInjuries.org.
Hi, we're back on Youth and Sports, having a great discussion with Tara Manel and her daughter Sydney, who is well mature beyond her years,
there you go.
and a great advocate for her school, which
I'll
is
tell you what, if you don't
Laz-
want to go to immersion school after you see Sydney, you're crazy.
Well,
I think I'm going to change my my choices here.
There you go.
It's just, no, if you think about it, Sydney, do you have enough chemistry equipment? Do you feel that you have, having been to a public school with the resources that they have in public school, you know, they have the lab stuff, and do you have that stuff at school? Do you feel like you're a poor school? Or do you feel like this? You feel like you got everything you need?
Yes.
How about programs? That's always, you know, in grade schools and stuff, field trips and programs. What type of
where do you
things?
go to field trips? The Spanish Market? No, I meant that.
Actually, no, it's not a bad question.
Well,
Where are you headed?
we haven't been doing very many. We haven't had a field trip this year, and last year we had a couple. but like now that we're in 5th grade and the older kids, we can take field trips for different subjects. So we're going to go on a Spanish field trip soon, and we're going to actually be going out to a Spanish-speaking place and just like speak Spanish.
Excellent.
The Spanish American Center down on 4th Street, we have a lot of their athletes and so forth. And
go to the racetrack. That's where I learned. Go to the racetrack.
Well, the Spanish you learn at the racetrack.
It's a lot different than the Spanish you learn. Yes, it is.
No, that's not true. One of my best friends is a jockey agent, and his jockey's, is earning $2 million a year, but he speaks Spanish. And I keep telling the jockey, I said, if you're going to do great, to do TV interviews, you got to start speaking English. And he's just embarrassed about it. And the trouble is, they all stay together and speak Spanish. They go home and speak Spanish.
Yes, they all live together.
What you're doing, Sydney, is great because you're mixing it up so you can kind of...
All right, I'm ready to bite on this one. Sydney, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Now, would you like to be an interpreter and involved in that whole process?
No, but I think having Spanish is good because it at least will give me the chance to do what I want because I will know at least another language.
I didn't convince you to be an orthopedic surgeon yet? I thought I'd already had her convinced. Oh, gee.
Well, one of the Hispanic guys that owns hospitals, he just paid $50 million for horses. So it might be a good deal with my son.
I'll tell you, I think it's excellent. It does. You're exactly right, Cindy. It opens you up for almost anything.
Sure.
Because now it's coming into every field. It's in IT. It's in medicine. You don't just
fashion.
need to be a
it's in
translator. It's not just a translator anymore.
Well, look in our office. We have one of the young ladies in our office is Hispanic, and she does all the interpreting, the medical Spanish and so forth. The nice thing is you always have the ability to do that, and the telephones that they have that you can do it over the phone, that isn't nearly the same because you can't read the faces.
Sydney, is that your uniform?
Yes.
And it's very cute. I think that uniforms should be, where you're trying to keep these kids in style and spending thousands of dollars on stuff, and yet uniforms solves all that problem. Everybody looks the same.
They have a winter uniform and a summer uniform, and the winter uniform begins November 1st, so they're in their winter uniform.
I tell you, I'm really impressed. It takes a lot to impress me with some of the kids we've had on, but Sydney, you're very impressive.
Okay, so let's go on to what could you do if someone were going to give your school something to make the school better. What do you think the school needs?
Julio Inglés.
I think the school would be better off with, I think it would just be good with the playground, not even for the sense to play, just the sense that they could have the extra space, and that especially for the little kids because they're doing so many things now that it's just good to go off and have a place to be because we have a lot of things in our school already. We have smart boards in every classroom, and we have all the computers and we have all this stuff. So there's nothing that can make each class better, I don't think. I think it's just something that could be great for the entire school and that everybody can enjoy together.
Is there space there to even have it? Could they put it out the back? Is there available some land?
Well, we have, our building is attached to another building, which they use after school hours, so it's not crammed, but it's the Delaware Sportsplex. So we can't really put it out back because there's the parking area for everything.
What if the Sportsplex was nice enough to let you use their building when...
They do sometimes when it's bad weather outside, but we don't normally go in there, so...
Tara, earlier you said that it's expanding every year. Is this building large enough for...
to go somewhere?
Yeah, they actually built a classroom this year because so as each class adds, now they're going to have to go to 7th grade and then 8th grade. So they're growing. And
but can they do it in this building?
Well, this gym is really, really large, and so that's what they started parceling out because it was ginormous. I mean, it was overwhelmingly large. But I'm not 100% sure what their future plans are to manage it. They were in one of those lotteries kind of things for a gym where you can, a playground where everyone calls in, and if you get enough call-ins, then you get your free, you win the prize. And we didn't win, but they are certainly gunning for a playground, so they have a plan where they
How long will Sid stay in this system, in this immersion school?
It goes till 8th grade.
Oh,
and then you'll have to make a decision on where you go next.
Right.
Let me ask you a cultural question, Sydney. I've always noticed, and of course everybody's noticed, that Hispanic kids have, with their wardrobes and everything, like colors a little bit more, like, you know, where you're more conservative, you can see the way your mother's dressed. Do you talk about fashion at all with some of the Hispanic kids?
Well, I think that because everybody just treats each other the same.
Right.
It's whatever we want to talk about. So some of the girls like to talk about fashion while the guys like to talk about playing soccer.
Right.
So we just kind of talk about whatever. So it's not like one specific area or group or like culture likes to talk about one thing. We just all kind of talk about something all together.
And there's a lot of similarity in their age groups, just in their interests. You know, they all
or what
have
they see on TV, what
the
they see in the magazines,
boots and the you know that thing, that
sure.
stuff you see, the hoodies. I mean, they're all doing the same thing. So they really don't. Even on days when they have dress your own way day, you know, dress down day, you can pay $1 for a fundraiser. They really are pretty seamless. They all look like each other.
Best favorite Spanish food?
Tacos.
Tacos?
I was going to say the same thing, tacos. But
paella.
When I was in Mexico, I mean, I had some great food and liked it, and I think that like it's a matter of trying it.
Right.
You know, just like you're talking about.
Any food that you've eaten that you haven't liked?
I'm not big on spices.
Oh, hot peppers.
So there's a couple dishes that aren't necessarily my favorite, but they're not horrible. I've eaten worse.
Be careful.
Just a little spicy.
Don't talk about your mom's cooking.
Be careful, Sydney. Be careful if they're eating some hot peppers and just chomping away and say, "Here, try one." Don't do that. Because I did that in California. I thought I was going to die.
They have Hispanic night at school too, and everyone brings in dishes, so the kids get to go around and try lots of different things.
So that's like part of their program. So they do a lot of extracurricular activities and get families together.
Sydney studied different countries where Spanish is a language. They've studied famous Spanish people, and so they do, you know, that same kind of thing that we do typically. You know, your favorite president or your favorite. They do the exact same things, but there's often a bend towards that culturalism.
Tell us how you go about applying, getting in, how the process is.
Yeah, of course it is changing a little bit as it's expanding, and now it's getting almost tighter, if you will, you know, than the first round. But they're accepting applications. Applications are open now.
For kindergarten or for
every grade.
Every grade?
And because, you know, there is transition. People migrate, they move, they have to make a different choice, and so there can be an opening even in a higher grade. And so there are openings, there's application period, and they do similar things related to siblings and things like that. But that's an opportunity to apply in that typical kind of charter fashion.
Is there any application for having a high school that's a charter school for this immersion?
We've heard discussion about that.
Because you stop in the 8th grade, and it's a shame to waste that nucleus.
That's
and not
definitely
go on.
the argument. So I think that you're going to see movement in that direction. I don't know the timing of things and whether that will be something available for Sydney or not based on the years.
Maybe they can combine the schools to have a high school. Like, you know, to come from the other two charters with Spanish and the Chinese one and put them all together, get a big place and go from there.
Sydney, have you been bored since you've gotten to the immersion school?
No.
You have a lot of homework?
Well, it's not really any more than at a regular school. We do get Spanish homework, but we tend to not get as much homework from we don't get as much homework from some of the other teachers, I think, because they know that we have extra things that we have to do.
When you go to a lab, do you work where you have to hear yourself speak? Do you actually have headphones where you can hear, you know, and you're asked to repeat sentences, whether the traditional way to learn Spanish? When I was going there, they would give you an English sentence and you would have to say the Spanish sentence, and then they would give you the Spanish sentence to see how you did. Do you?
No.
What about, Sydney, there's so many nuances in Spanish, just like in every language, our language. You know, if you go to England, they speak the same words, but they're different.
Right.
They sound differently.
Do you learn any of the nuances in like Spanish from Venezuela and Spanish from Spain?
Well, a lot of times we just learn like universal words, like words that when you go to any place they would normally use them. But sometimes our teacher will talk about words that might have more, you might use them more in a different area. but not a lot of times, because the idea is to be able to go to a place that's Hispanic and just talk, so we don't focus on learning one type.
But the teachers come from different environments.
Right, exactly.
So Senor Pay's from where? He's
Colombia.
Colombia. He's
There you
the
go.
art teacher. And the Spanish teachers are from Puerto Rico, right?
Which is different.
So the different teachers also bring in their own, not only some different word choices, but their accents, and those things get melded in.
Do the kids have like fun words that they have? Like we have slang. Do they have slang in Spanish?
Well, we sometimes we don't necessarily learn that a lot.
Well, no, they don't want you to learn that.
If we would pick it up from some of the kids, if we pick it up from some of the kids, but normally they just use whatever we learn in class because they don't want to go too overboard.
Well, we're down to a minute, and then we're going to summarize this. So the intent for this particular program was for parents and grandparents to help direct what opportunities are out there. I didn't know about immersion schools until Sydney engaged in hers, and I thought that if I didn't hear about it, that there's a lot of other people out there that hadn't heard about it as well. We think it is the wave of the future. We think integration is certainly a necessity for harmony, and we're moving in that direction, and what better way to do that than to have classmates that are sharing each other's ideas. What did you learn tonight, Walter?
I learned about the schools, and I think it's a great idea, and just like I was always been big on, well, we're just about out of time. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, our pleasure.
What does opportunity mean to you? At Wilmington University, it means finding your relevance in the job market. That's why we offer career-oriented degree programs that meet employment needs in emerging fields. Dedicated professors bring their real-world experience into the classroom so you'll graduate with the tools you need to succeed on the job. It's your degree. Make it relevant to your career. Personalized education, affordable tuition, that's the difference at Wilmington University.
This show was sponsored by ATI, the company taking physical therapy to a higher level throughout the country. First State Orthopedics, where Youth in Sports hosts Drs. Straight and Axe are members of the team taking care of Delaware with a commitment to excellence. And President Jack Barcelona and his Wilmington University College of Technology, where each semester this student-run program is produced, directed, edited, and distributed under the guidance of the TV production faculty. Each guest receives a copy of the show, and all shows are available on the web at youthinsports.com.